So I guess we'll get started. Today we have this is one of the series talk from YPPDO. And we're happy to have Professor Karsten Heeger and Professor Chiara Mingarelli here going to talk about navigating the academic job market. And we're happy to have you here in this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're winning.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. We're happy to chat a little bit about applications, what it takes to navigate the job market. And I think we have an hour together or a little bit more. So Chiara and I, we prepared a few slides just to guide the conversation and guide the different steps. So landing a position in academia. But I think we wanted to make this more of a Q&A and conversation. So we'll have a couple of slides. We just have some talking points, but then definitely jump in. We want to make sure that all questions are addressed and that this is perhaps the most useful for you.
That's right. Yeah. So don't be shy about asking questions as we go. They're really constructed. Like these slides are just to guide the conversation. Oh, wow. You can see all of the ugly. Normally, these are all hidden nicely. Okay. Fantastic. What an opportunity to increase my Zoom skills. You all know that we're in the physics department. Okay, great. So I think the first thing that it's important to know is that by the time the job is posted, it's probably too late, that they have someone in mind. So if you're thinking about going on the job market, make sure people know that you are going to be on the job market and tell people that you're interested in being on the job market. So before you start thinking about say that it's, the fall right now and you're applying for postdocs, you should have already tried to, contact your network, tell people you're excited about applying for postdocs, ask people who has postdocs, who has money, are they interested in working what you want to work on? You should really just try that, to give talks. You can invite yourself to places to give talks. It's totally normal. It can be, depending on the place, depending on how well you know people, it's received in different ways, but certainly if you have close collaborators, you can say, I'd love to visit you and tell you what I'm working on. And that's normally very well received. So it's important to develop your network right now before you get on the job market so that by the time you're looking for jobs, people know who you are and what you work on. And you also in turn know who's going to be hiring.
Yeah, and let me just expand on that and say that basically everything you do, not to put any pressure on anyone, but going to a conference, talking to people, this is building your network. And this is really important as you go through your career. So there's every talk is essentially a display of what you do in your professional life, what you're working on. And you want to take this as an opportunity to convey your excitement, whether it's a small workshop of the collaboration or a big national or international conference. All of these little things come together to build your visibility and to build who you are as a scientist in the community. And that's in the end what everyone is looking for. And the perspectives that we bring is, Chiara joined our department 2 years ago. I've been now here for a while. We have done a number of searches, both at the postdoc level, at the faculty level. And in the end, when we think about doing a search, we have at least 10, 20 people in mind who could fill that position. Not necessarily saying that they are the ones and they're the ones that we would pick, but basically we think about where are the exciting opportunities, what are the fields that we want to pursue. And so the talks that we hear at conferences that inspire us, they definitely shape that thinking.
When they say every job is a job talk, this is 100% true. Now when I was a postdoc giving talks, I thought that was probably like a fear tactic to give good talks. But actually now that I can hire postdocs and recruit grad students, I go see their talks. And then I think, would this person fit well into my group? And how comfortable are they with the questions? How well do they know the material? So it really is true that every talk is a job talk. Okay, so now what are your questions for us?
Or we'll just go on and you can just jump in, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Will it always be the student who reach out to the faculty, or like when you, for example, when you give a talk, and the faculty will ask, "I'm interested in post-observation." Would that ever happen?
It's more common for students to reach out to faculty to ask to give talks than to be invited to give one, especially when you're younger. So don't be shy to reach out and say, you know, I'm going to be around here. I would love to stop by and visit you. Maybe if you have time, I could give a talk. If not, I could come to group meetings, tell you what I'm excited about, what I'm working on. But you know, it takes a while for the invitation to go the other way. People need to know who you are, what you're working on, and be excited about it. So it's up to you really to hustle when you're getting started.
I guess it's nice to have like two professors who did job searches maybe at different times. So I was wondering, has faculty searching become harder, like lately, like number of faculty spots versus the number of applicants available? At least that's my perception. It's getting a lot harder lately to land an academic job. So I'm just curious if you've noticed any trends in that direction.
I'm not sure if it's the process has changed for sure. And we'll talk more about the elements of an application and how it works and who's involved in all of these things. I can't really say whether it has gotten harder or easier. I mean, I think there's always an element of risk. It's never guaranteed. Now, I think more information is out there with online rumor mills. You can track the shortlist and all of this, which I think has actually increased the uncertainty and the pressure on everyone involved. So, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's still a process that's competitive for sure. But I mean, people succeed and they do manage to get jobs. And I think in the end, you have to decide for yourself, and we'll talk more about it, whether it's the right environment for you. Are you excited to pursue this? I think it has enormous, I think it's super exciting to do what we do. We have an absolute freedom of choosing our research topics, all of these things, but it also comes with downsides. And so everyone has to make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll talk more about this as we go.
Yes, I regularly get emails from Karsten at 5:30 a.m. All of the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can we start with this one if you like?
Sure, yeah. So I think one of the things that becomes important, perhaps not so much as a postdoc, but starting there, but then definitely as a faculty. People want, well, it's useful to be known for something. They know you for your experiment or project that you're working on, but then even within that project, you want to be known for something. You want to be known as the person who either built the experiment, made it work, or did this analysis. I mean, developed a certain expertise. Basically, it's important to show that you have the ability to drive a part of a project or an experiment or drive part of a research. So you have to become an expert in something. I mean, clearly, this doesn't happen overnight, but at the end of the day, you want to be an expert. It doesn't help to be a generalist in 10 different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you choose your research, especially when you get to the postdoc level as a graduate student, you have your dissertation, you work closely with your advisor. When you get to the postdoc level, maybe you're picking up a couple of different projects, a couple of different experiments. So think about how they hang together and how to balance breadth and depth. So developing some depth is really important. And as part of that, in the end, you want to think about how you talk about and let people know about what your expertise is. So giving talks at conferences, seminars, you can start thinking about your scientific identity, or you might even call it your brand. But it helps in the end, especially at the faculty level searches, if you're known for something in the college. Ideally, people will want to know, okay, you are the US or the international expert for X in that field.
Karsten, would it be putting you too much on the spot if you shared with the students what your identity is?
Well, so when I was first on the job market, I mean, I had worked on the solar neutrino problem, measuring neutrino oscillations with solar neutrinos. So my thesis was on the SNOW experiment, submarine neutrino observatory. Then I worked on the Camelot reactor experiment in Japan, so where we had measured terrestrial neutrino oscillations, confirming the solar neutrinos. So I became essentially a neutrino oscillation person, non-accelerated neutrino oscillation person, discovering neutrino transformation, solar neutrino transformation. That was something that worked out well. I mean, the results were there, but it doesn't always have to be that level of measurement. It can also be really becoming the person who is developing an analysis or building a piece of equipment, but know how to talk about what your expertise is. That's
mine, for example, is I wrote the first paper on anisotropy in the gravitational wave background. So making maps of gravitational waves is my thing, right? People think of anisotropy, that's me, and that's great. And there's a question back here.
Yeah, say at one point in your career you want to switch a little bit your area of research. How do you still kind of do this while searching for something a little bit new?
I have a story to tell. I think people want to know why you're switching, what interests you. So I think it's good to convey whatever it is, whether it's a curiosity or other factors that drive you. So I think definitely between so in my case, when I did neutrino oscillations between grad school and postdoc, and then landed my first faculty job with it. But people do switch experiments, and that's perfectly fine. But think about why it is and what interests you, and have a compelling story to tell. But I think in the end, I think what everyone is looking for is this scientific curiosity and also seeing that you can explore new ideas. It's also good.
Mm-hmm. One of my colleagues who was a postdoc with me left astrophysics to go work for the Gates Foundation, a private foundation. And her story was that she wanted to do something that was more related to the real world, maybe leaving behind supermassive black holes. But her story was just, I'm an expert in Bayesian analysis, and now I can apply this to, disease propagation models and basically do the same kind of analysis, but in something that really resonated with her and that was important to her. And so that kind of story, it's very natural. You just say, I have this, skill, and now I'm applying the skill to a different area. And it's also not so uncommon, I think, as you get a little bit older, maybe if you're at, full professor stage, to start, putting out feelers in slightly different areas to be like, oh, I wonder what's going on over here. I've only seen maybe the much more senior people take that kind of risk.
Well, I mean, it happens, I think, at a number of career stages, but be intentional about it and think about what the arc or the trajectory is of your work.
Wondering, speaking of areas, is so there's someone kind of told me that in order to be a good scientist, you kind of need to know both sort of experiment and also theory. So is it good to be expert in one of the thing, or be kind of good at two things at the same?
So I think you want to show that you can make important contributions, you can advance the field, you can drive something forward. For some people, it's experiment. For some people, it's theory. For some people, it's both. And it really depends. I mean, typically at the graduate student level, I always recommend try to stick with one project and really become an expert at that. That might involve doing some analysis and hardware and so on, but try not to spread yourself out too thin. At the postdoc level, your approach might change a little bit, because depending on what you're working on, maybe you want to have a couple of different projects that are also staggered in time, because the next step after your postdoc is perhaps going out for a faculty position, and then you want to have a program that within, let's say, 6-7 years gets you tenure. So you have to think ahead for that. So it depends a little bit, yeah, what stage you're.
I think if you're good at two things, you know, that's nice, but you have to be excellent at one thing. And so if you want to be, if you're kind of thinking about two different things, like make sure that one of them, you're really like the person and that it's exciting for you, that like you're going to wake up at 3 a.m. You can't get back to sleep because you're so excited about doing this thing, right? Like you're like, you know what I mean? Has it happened to you too? But like, so you need to have that because that'll make you better than everyone else at that one thing. And that one thing is probably the thing that resonates with you the most. And so no one's going to be better than you at that thing because no one cares about it as much as you do. No one else is waking up at 3 a.m. to work on the thing, right? And so if you're good at two things, then, you know, that's fine, but you're not going to have, as Karsten was saying, that academic, you know, persona or a brand of being like the expert in that one thing. People are like, I have a question about neutrino oscillations. Who am I going to call? Karsten or Art McDonald? Or, you know, another Nobel Prize winner, who knows? So I think that it's, and then theory and data. I started doing, you know, very hardcore theory. I don't even think I can pronounce the title of my first paper. It was on Heckman-Shecking solutions of the field equations that I generalized in an anisotropic universe with a positive cosmological constant. I don't know. It was hard. And now, you know, I've done theoretical work, but I also get closer to the data because now I think it's important to be able to make predictions that are testable. So, but it doesn't mean that I am now an expert in all things data related. It means that I'm kind of close enough to make reasonable theories that can be tested. Do you see what I mean? Like there's always a bit of a middle ground, but I still have the identity of being, you know, the person that comes up with models and that, you know, now we can test them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, it's going to be job season soon, Karsten. What's the anatomy of an application?
Yeah, so there are several elements and they're all really important. So typically, if you apply, whether it's postdoc or especially faculty, and we're mostly thinking about faculty for positions here, you have a research statement that, of course, describes what you have done, what your interests are, and what your program is going forward. For faculty applications, you would also have a statement about teaching interest, teaching philosophy, and that also describes what you have done, what experience you have. There is your CV, of course, publication list, and then there is a cover letter. And the cover letter is really important because it should give the person reading the application concisely a reason why they should consider you for this job. So it should not be 5 pages re-summarizing everything that you have in the other statements. So that's why you have these separate documents. But on a page, give them in 3-4 paragraphs a compelling reason why you are a great candidate for this position and why you're excited about coming to that particular institution. So when you write it, really think about, okay, you're writing to a committee, you're writing to some potential future colleagues, and tell them why you are excited about this and why you're good at this for this job. So think about it that you're really addressing the committee, the audience, the people who are reading it. Think about the human on the other side who will be reading it. That's really important. Now, until recently, we had DEI statements. They've gone away. But it doesn't mean that all the values that were encapsulated in that have gone away. So this is something to be clear about and be aware of. Research the institution that you're applying to. How do they display themselves online, on the web? Talk to people. And even though there are no more diversity statements, building an inclusive community, working on community, all of these things may still be really important. And so if you want to convey that. For all of the statements, make sure that they are targeted towards the institution. There's nothing else that's more off-putting when you get an application, and you can definitely tell it's a generic application and they just changed the name and the address, and there's nothing that is specific to your institution. It doesn't mean that you have to write something completely different for each institution. It's basically you have your backbone of the structure and then you tailor it. But it means you have done your homework, you know who you're applying to, what institution, who your future colleagues might be, and what they might be looking for. And again, see it not as just an application and a job on a website, but see it as thinking about seeing yourself as a future colleague in the department, whether it's a postdoc or faculty. We all like to hire future colleagues because, I mean, basically we do what we like, and we want to work with people that share our ideas and values.
And just to loop back to what we were talking about earlier, make sure that this isn't the first time that they've heard from you, right? Like when you put in your application, they should be expecting your application. So you should have already reached out to someone who's in charge of whatever position it is, postdoc or faculty, express that you're interested, ask specific questions. They should be expecting your application when it comes in. Because on the other side, at least, so I was on the Mossman Fellowship Committee, and there were 700 applications, and there were 127 in astrophysics that I had to look at. And I couldn't read every single one in extreme detail. So the ones where people had reached out to me beforehand and asked me questions, I could more easily sort through. And so everyone is in this kind of situation of being completely overwhelmed with applications. So you have to make sure that people know who you are, so that when they see your name, they're like, oh yeah, I remember this person. They were interesting. They reached out to me. They're really serious about this position. And so that's another way that you can distinguish yourself, especially, in this kind of really tight job market.
You know someone at the institution, but not necessarily who is reviewing the applications, or you don't know that person. Is it a good idea to ask for a connection to the person, or just reach out to them? Or I guess I'm wondering how one even finds out who is the right person to reach out to in some of these cases. Maybe it's really transparent, or maybe sometimes it's hard to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it depends on the institution. Sometimes the chair of the search committee is known, they're listed on the website. Sometimes it's a generic email address like physics search or whatever. Reaching out to people is always helpful. I mean, we all talk in the department, and certainly especially when we're searching for faculty positions, it's something that all our faculty are aware of, that we're searching in this field. And I mean, if interesting candidates come along, we talk about it. You can also ask if you can get in touch with the chair of the search committee, and then ask them about what they're looking for in the search, especially when the searches are advertised very broadly. If it's like a search in particle physics, it could be collider physics, it could be cosmology, it could be neutrino physics. So just ask questions to get a sense of what the institution is looking for, and then you can tailor it and just gain as much insight as you can.
So specifically, what I would do in the case that you described is that I would email my colleague, the person I know, and then ask them, for an email address or someone connected to the search. And then when you email that person, you would CC your friend or your colleague to be like, I heard about, some details from this friend, and I'm just curious to know more, and follow up. And that way they understand what the connection is and where you're coming from. But you have to know those people in the first hand. So it's good to, get yourself out there.
The other thing that I would just say is that get some feedback on your application. Hopefully you would be working with your advisor or mentors on this. Get some feedback from peers on drafts. It's really important to have someone else read the applications and your statements. I know it can be incredibly stressful, and it feels incredibly personal to ask someone to read a research or teaching statement, or especially, I mean, if they're teaching or DI statements, I always felt like they're just so personal. And you might feel like, yeah, there's a real threshold in getting feedback. Find a trusted friend, start with them, but it just makes the application stronger, right? To just go through several iteration cycles. The other thing that I would mention is that at Yale, we also have the Porwu Center. They have a graduate writing lab. They have people who are willing to work with you on every piece of written thing, whether it's a dissertation, whether it's an application. And I find often that this resource is not known widely enough, that not everyone makes use of it. But I would definitely say when you get to either fellowship applications, postdoc applications, and faculty applications, make use of people whose job it is to, and who have the expertise in editing and giving you feedback. And they are very helpful because they even come in with a perspective that's not field specific. So they can help you with clarity of thought, how to write, how to structure a cover letter, and all these things. And they are much better than any AI tool.
Definitely. It's funny that your perspective is that for you, it felt very personal. For me, I felt like I didn't want to be a burden to my supervisor, who already only had 5 minutes a day to meet with me if I was lucky. Sometimes I camped outside of his office waiting for him to come in to be like, I have a question. But now on the other side, if I find out that one of my students has handed in something and I haven't looked at it, I'm shocked and a little bit wounded. I'm like, don't you care? But I think I can help you make this better. This is why I'm here. I care about you. I want to help you succeed. So, the people that you're working with, especially your advisors, really, really want you to succeed. So don't forget that, that's their perspective. It's not a burden. It's part of the job. And it's something that, we enjoy doing.
I mean, it's more than part of the job. I think we want all our students and advisees to succeed. And even though sometimes it might seem we're incredibly busy and they're not responding to every email and all of these things, and I'm speaking here from personal experience, but definitely for things like fellowship applications for future jobs, it is important, and I think everyone will take time. So don't give up on your advisor. I think they all care.
Yes. And if it's been like 3 or 4 days and it's getting close to the deadline, just do a reply and say something like top of your inbox. That's it, right? That's all it takes. And they're like, oh yeah, darn, because we can't keep track of all of the deadlines. There's too many. So it's up to you to also manage your supervisor. Yeah. In the back.
I was wondering, generally, what do you look for when you're applying to a university in terms of the qualities of the university itself? So, for example, what are the tenure requirements? How does that vary with universities? Does a place like Yale, for example, being a very highly ranked university, would have stronger tenure requirements? Are these explicitly stated when you're applying, or is that you have something you have to talk to people and find out in more personal conversations? So I'm just wondering if you think about all that when deciding to apply for a faculty position.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important that you do your research and finding out online everything that you can about the university, promotion process, all of these things. Talk to people in your field. They are the best resource because basically we are writing constantly also letters for tenure, for promotion, and so on. So we know what other institutions are looking for and how their process works. So start with your advisor, talk with others in your field about it. In the end, where you apply to is there depends on many factors. And people have perhaps geographic constraints, you want to look at the research profile. The nature of tenure and promotions is different at different institutions. And when I was looking for a job, people initially said, don't apply to MIT and Harvard. You're going to be an assistant professor and they'll spit you out. And that's no good. Now, the same was true for Yale at the time. A lot of institutions have changed their promotion process. So now at Yale, for example, we have a tenure line waiting for every faculty offer that we make. So it doesn't mean that everyone is guaranteed tenure, but it does mean that there is a position. So if you reach the level of tenure in terms of research teaching and all of this, you are guaranteed a position. That was not always the case. So that really depends on the culture at the institution. And so you can ask colleagues, I mean, what's the rate of getting tenure? And who has gotten tenure and who has left the institution? So I think these are all fair questions. And then you can make your assessment. Are you willing to go that route or not? So what chances do you take? When I've seen now that people apply more and more broadly to just a large number of institutions, but in the end, and we'll talk more about this, you want to be a good fit for the institution, and the institution wants to find a good fit when they can.
Yeah, I think that's right. So one of the questions that I asked Karsten when I was talking to him, considering coming here, was, how many tenured positions do you have per, non-tenured hires that you make? He was like, it's 1-to-1. And that was, a relief. There's some places like Karsten was mentioning, like Harvard, and it depends if you're in physics or astronomy, but where it's kind of just like a battle royale, they'll hire 5 people and there's 1 tenured position, and you'll get another job because, you were still at a great place and I'm sure you did great research, but it's not guaranteed. It's never guaranteed, but it's nice to know that it's there for you, like if you work hard enough and you get there.
So this slide mentions the fit with the department. I wonder if that's important even for postdoc applications.
Well, for postdoc applications, I would change the phrase to fit with the research group or fit with the advisor. I mean, at the end of the day, we all care about the people that we work with. And I mean, everyone has different styles and is looking for different environments. And so I think you want to find an advisor and a mentor that's fit for you, because it really becomes a personal relationship, how you work together, and vice versa. And so I think the important emphasis here is it's not always at the end of the day about absolute skills. And so, I mean, when departments are looking for faculty colleagues, we are looking for someone who can make a positive, important contribution to the department, to the university, be a good citizen, engage in teaching. All of these things are important.
I have a question. As you mentioned, we should start the application well before the advertisement is posted. What should we do specifically? Like, should we have a list of potential university and then reach out to people in that specific institution?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for example, what I would recommend is, for example, if you're a graduate student or a postdoc, thinking about the next step in your career. And as you prepare for a talk, let's say at the next annual meeting of your subfield or the next national conference, think about who do you want to talk to at the conference? Who do you want to network with? And let them know that you are graduating in 9 months from now, or you're looking for a job, and start a conversation. So basically, when you go to places like conferences, go there with a purpose, not just to give your talk, but to talk to people and to let people know where you are in your career and what your interest and next step is. When I hear a great talk at a conference, I don't know immediately if this person is looking for a postdoc job or if they might want to go into industry and do data science on Wall Street. But if I know that they're interested in a postdoc position and they give an exciting talk, I might actually ask them some questions afterwards and have a conversation about the research that happens in my group.
And just to add a little bit to that, it's also important that they know when your talk is so that they can be there. So you should, so if I were, say, imagine that you're graduating, you talk to your supervisor and you say, like, what do you think some good places are for me to go to? If you haven't really built up a big network, your supervisor can make suggestions for you. And then when you're preparing to go to the meeting, say it's an APS meeting, you email those people and you say, I'm going to be looking for a job soon. I'm presenting some exciting results. I would love to talk to you about them. My talk is, during this session at this time. I look forward to seeing you there. I hope to meet you, something along those lines. And then they'll be there. And then it's really great because then they can ask you specific questions about your work, and then you can also see what they're interested in. Oh, big one.
Letters of recommendation, they're really important, and they carry a lot of weight, especially in the US process. And I emphasize the US process because what we're talking about is really, I would say specific to North America. And when there are differences in Europe and in Asia and so on. But typically when you apply for postdoc positions, and definitely when you apply for faculty, you are asked to provide some references or to arrange for letters to be sent. You want letters and letter writers to be able to talk about your work with knowledge and depth, and be able to talk about specifics of things that you have done. And so that means these should be people that you've worked with or had lots of conversations with, ideally from a variety of institutions, not just your own institution, just to show that you have had impact outside your immediate research groups. The process for that would be that you ask people if they're willing to write you a letter, if they can write you a strong letter, and give them a sense of the timeline and so on. Most people, I think, will always say, yes, of course, I'm happy to do this, but they need to know the timeline. If you ask them, can I have a letter tomorrow? That's just not going to. Be also aware of differences in culture, how letters are written. So I came from Europe, I'm an international student, went to grad school in the US and stayed here. And I did my undergraduate work in the UK, where basically if you got a letter saying, well, this student, he's really quite good, that would be a glowing recommendation. That would tank your application in the US. So US letters are definitely different. There's a lot that I can talk about, but basically they're very glowing, they're very detailed, quite lengthy. So be aware of that, because if you ask a European colleague who might be a great colleague in your collaboration to write you a letter, and if they are not familiar with the US system, you might get, she or he is quite good. That's not what you want. The other thing to realize is that people write quite a few letters, not just for our own students and postdocs. We often get asked to evaluate other faculty and so on. So help your letter writers. Make sure that they have everything they need in an easy way to talk about your work. And for me, this would mean I would ask, give me bullet points in addition to your CV, things that I can easily take and turn into a good and detailed letter. It doesn't mean that you're totally ghostwriting the letter for me, but it helps me make sure that I don't miss an important part of your work. And it also helps you actually put together a summary of all the things that you have done. So these will be your talking points during your job interview. I've done X, Y, Z. And if you talk about it in your job interview and then they see it in the letters, that's a consistent picture. So that's also really important.
Hello, there's a question in the chat. What are you supposed to do if your biggest collaborators in the UK do not ask the person for the letter?
You do, but you just tell them that it's for Americans. They know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dismiss European letters. I just wanted to point out that there are differences in writing style. So yeah, provide the information, tell them what it's for, make sure they have all the content. In the end, of course, if you get a Nobel laureate writing 2 lines saying, this is the best person in the field, you should absolutely hire them, that will carry some weight. And for what it's worth or not, but
A related question on that note, but the other way around, I'm curious about European fellowships like Marie Curie or particularly Germany, like Alexander Humboldt, DFG fellowships. And I think some of these only take 2 letters. Preferably one internal, so Yale, another one from outside. So the first part of the question is, what is the expectation for European reviewing committee for these fellowships? And the second question would be, what is the sufficient condition to ask an external letter writer, like from just, like where you were mentioned that having conversations or discussions with them in the past with collaborate. But at what point does it become like, okay, I know this person well enough and it's a suitable person to ask for?
It's a tricky question. I would say you want to have had sufficient engagement with them, either through formal collaboration or informal discussions, that they can speak enthusiastically about your work. And, so it could be that I've interacted with someone many times, conferences, workshops, and I really know what they're doing, and I can write a great letter. And yeah, so think about that. If they know you well enough that they can speak to a third person about your work and what you've done. So it's a little bit of balancing their visibility with how well they know you. And as far as applying to European fellowships, again, you want to have people that are known in Europe, that are known by the selection committee. So that's
maybe the follow-up is so the in the US there are more elaborate letters, but you mentioned that in UK it's one line like this person's good. Yeah, what's like a I guess the realistic expectation on that, and then also let's say that if you have some advisors at Yale who are well known in Europe, who's maybe they were in Europe or whatever, but they may not be your primary advisor, like the main person on your thesis committee.
Yeah.
Is there a trade-off to maybe have an advisor on your committee who used to be in Europe versus your primary advisor that you have here?
Yeah, so I would say not having a letter from your primary advisor will always raise questions. I mean, this person is the thesis advisor. If you don't have a letter from your thesis advisor, at the minimum, people will wonder, why is this person not writing for their own student, and what's going on there? So always have your thesis advisor or primary postdoc mentor write for you. And then in addition, think about that. Sometimes you have the option to jobs specify a minimum of 3 letters, so then you can definitely send in 4 or 5, that's fine. So you can ask a couple of additional people. You don't want to flood people with 10 letters. That's also not good style, but 1 or 2 extra is okay.
So one thing to add to that is if you're starting a new postdoc position, for example, you should look around the institute and say, who's going to be my letter writer from this place, right? And make sure that you identify who that person could be, so that at the end of your 3 years there, you know that at least one person in this institute can write you a good letter. And that might be your primary advisor, but it might be someone else that you end up working with. But you should always have this in mind, right? Of, you have to be a little bit strategic. You can't just go into things and hope it's going to work out. Maybe it will, but maybe it won't. And you'll have a much better chance if you have a plan. So when you start somewhere, take a look at the landscape and then try to figure out, who are the people I want to work with? Who's going to write me letters? What is their letter going to say about me at the end of my 3 years here?
I think several hands.
Yeah, something that I see a lot, especially with grad students, is that the people who know their work most closely are postdocs and non-permanent people. And so how, I guess, what's your perspective on the trade-off between having a non-permanent person write a letter versus a faculty member who might not know their work as well?
So for postdocs positions, as a graduate student applying to postdocs, it may be okay to have postdocs or research scientists write letters, but for faculty positions, you need to have faculty level. So often what happens is I would ask, or people would ask the postdocs or scientists in their group, help me with this letter. Can you suggest some talking points? What is really important? But it does, unfortunately, and that's different set of discussions, but it does need faculty level letters if you want to apply for that.
But it's also up to you. You need to make sure that the person with the faculty position is the person that knows you, really well, that can write you a good letter. So even though you're working closely with postdocs, make sure that you try to set up some meetings sometimes with the person that will be writing you the letter, so that it's not just like they don't know who you are and then suddenly they have to write you a letter. So it really is important to develop a relationship, even though there might be some sort of, Max Planck kind of hierarchy happening in the group. It's normal, especially with bigger groups, but it's up to you to make sure that the people who need to know what you've done know exactly what you've done so that they can write you strong letters.
Basic question, not explicitly about letters of rec. When it comes to non-fellowship postdoc positions, what fraction of them are like kind of localized in time, sometime in the fall that they come out, and what portion of them are scattered at other times? I think I don't have a great sense of the typical.
I think most of them come out in the fall. I don't know of many people that don't advertise in the fall unless it's specific.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So I think there are some fields, some subfields that have very strong annual cycles of application. So for the theory fields, for example, they even agree on certain common deadlines so that postdoc applicants can make a decision between fellowships and so on.
Yeah.
Fellowships are also an annual cycle. For other groups, it depends. And I would say certainly in my field, neutrino physics, experimental physics, sometimes people are just on the lookout, and if a good person comes along, they'll just hire them. So yes, there might be an opening that's advertised, and they might just say, okay, they look at a couple of people, and if it's the right person, then they jump on it or not. And I mean, it really depends.
And just to kind of tie everything together, sometimes people have money and they're just kind of sitting on it because they haven't identified someone that they want to hire. And so just because someone's not advertising for a position doesn't mean that they don't have a position. So it's good to let people know that you're looking for one so that they can go to your talk and they can ask you questions. And then when you apply for it, they can maybe even put out an advertisement knowing someone good is going to apply for it that they do want to hire.
Just going back to earlier points of how, making sure that people who you're considering working with also get to see your talk. Is it considered desperate if you say in your talk that, hey, I'm looking for a postdoc position after this? Or
Happens all the time.
okay, how is that viewed? Is it, or as a grad student, or as a postdoc, I'm looking for a faculty position. How's that perceived?
Maybe it's field specific. You seem to be kind of cringing. For me, it's a joke. All the postdocs put I need another job at the end of their talks and everything.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
So maybe it's field specific, maybe it's personal. I think you should definitely let people know and find your own style in doing so. Maybe it is the banner at the end of your talk.
Yeah.
Looking for a postdoc position, and here's my LinkedIn profile.
Your advisor can also do it for you to be this student is graduating this fall, ... And that normally gets laughs too.
Or you can also just mention it casually. I mean, here's the work that I've been doing, and I'm looking to extend it in the future. So it depends. I have to think about it. I haven't seen the direct banner for.
It's very common in astrophysics to be very blunt at the end of your talk, to be and if you enjoyed this, you can have 3 more years of it.
I actually want to put up on the letter of recommendation. So I was recently asked to write a letter of recommendation as a postdoc for a colleague of mine who applied for a position at MIT Lincoln Lab. And that was my first time writing a letter of recommendation. And I was actually very excited to do that exercise. And I was a colleague of mine, but also a really good friend of mine. And I really wanted to do it right, especially because I was going to help him for his next step in his career. And it turns out that he got an official offer before I'd even sent the recommendation letter. So I sometimes feel that the job talk is really the important part. That's sometimes letter of recommendation, maybe just a formality, but it probably depends a lot on the institutions and the places.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for postdoc positions, definitely knowing the candidate, job talks, really key. For faculty applications, it's different because at the end of the day, it's not just the subfield PI that decides on it. So it goes in front of the entire faculty. Then you have n number of faculty from all subfields looking at the candidate. So for example, when we search here in particle physics, we had a search running this year in experimental particle physics. In the end, we have to make the case to all our colleagues that this is a person that we want to have in the department. And then it's not just talk, it's not just the slides. They also want to read the letters and the dossier.
Hi, actually, Sierra has a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the letter of recs before we move on. Is it preferable to have one of your letters come from your undergraduate advisor, even if they're not in the same field you're in now or planning to go into, just to have that part represented, or get another letter from someone in your current field, the field you're planning to go into?
So you're thinking about at the level of graduates when you're applying to postdocs, or?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say basically your undergraduate research experience, your undergraduate experience comes to an end with your graduate work. I mean, it's basically you get into grad school and maybe the undergraduate advisor can write for you when you apply for fellowships as a graduate student or so, but then you do your graduate work. And after 5 or 6 years and you get your PhD, it's really the people that you work with during that time. So I don't want to discount or discredit any of the very important undergraduate advising that happens, but it's really not relevant for the next step.
Yeah, your graduate work should overshadow anything that you did as an undergrad. And so hopefully, as you're developing your network, you're identifying people that you think would be good letter writers, and you're nurturing those relationships.
And of course, if it's still in the same field and there is a meaningful scientific connection throughout your graduate work, then perhaps that's okay, but otherwise, you don't do that.
So I assume that they would be a good person to keep like in contact with and in your network, to see what's going on in their department. And,
absolutely. So the other thing I would say is the field of academia and every subfield, it's actually pretty small. So that means through your lifetime, you're accumulating contacts and you build a network. And so keeping in touch with people is very good. Any relations that you can build, and don't give up on people that you encountered at some point throughout your career.
Sometimes they can do cute things too. Like when I got my first faculty position, I went back to my undergrad institution and I gave a colloquium, and they introduced me by reading the letter of reference that they'd written for me as an undergrad going for grad school, which was really sweet. But yeah, people keep them, and they do mean a lot. So yeah, I think it's always a good idea to keep anyone that's written you letters updated on what you're doing, because you just never know, like when you might need a 4th or a 5th letter. And then I wanted to comment on your question. It really depends on the person. So when I was hiring, I was on the hiring committee at the Flatiron Institute for CCA for many years. And some of the people and everyone there had to read the Flatiron Research Fellowship applications. There were 800, for 15 positions if you're lucky. So everyone had to read them. And some people put a lot of weight on the letters, and some people put more weight on the invited talks. Some people put more weight on the research application. And so it really depends. So if you can have 5 stars in each category, even better. So you did your job to the best of your ability, and that's perfect. But different people it's hard to predict what they'll look for. So all you can do is your best.
Me jumping a bit ahead of the slide here, but in regards to trying to travel with talks or say, hey, couldn't you try to aim to have that talk come in regards to applying for a job, like right before you look at your application, 2 months before? What's the sort of ideal time difference there?
Yeah, I mean, let's I mean, it depends. You want to give talks when you have something meaningful to say and important times in your research project. So that could be even a year and a half before you're applying for a project. So I think about when is a good and natural time to talk about your work and what you've done for it. And I would say in terms of finding postdoc positions, think at least 6 to 9 months ahead in terms of just letting people know that you are ending your graduate work and you're looking big, because it just takes time and all of it. So that's the timeline in terms of really putting yourself out there and thinking actively about this. I mean, talking about this slide, so we wanted to just emphasize, be proactive, be prepared. Your advisors and mentors, they're always very willing to support you. They are well-meaning, but you have to drive it. I think that's really important. Show initiative. This is also something that will, set you apart from the pack, and you want to be the one that is seen as driving something and leading a project and so on. And we also mentioned grants here. If there are opportunities, especially as a postdoc, to even apply for little grants, or as a graduate student to apply for fellowships, that shows initiative, and that's really important. And it also hones your skills in terms of writing applications, research statements, and so on. So take it as a learning opportunity. And even if it doesn't work out, that's okay. But you can talk about, you applied for this, and that's really.
It also shows that you're, that you can hustle, that you understand, like you're being like a junior, very junior faculty member. You're applying for all of these grants and you're not going to get all of them, but you might get a few. And if you can get different pots of money, and add them all together and have something, that covers like all of your research travel for 2 years, that's meaningful. And not only, to your group, but also just to show that like you understand how the system works, you understand how to write grants, you understand how to get money. And then, things only get more difficult as you get more senior. So having lots of practice, especially as a grad student, I think really important.
Next slide, I come from behind.
I think we're almost done. So interviews, job
Okay.
talk. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I think.
You need to go faster.
So interviews, if and when you get invited for an interview, that's great. Engage with the committee. So typically, once the committee has made selection, they want to essentially get on with the interviews. So respond promptly, be enthusiastic, thank them for the opportunity, prepare for the interviews, and make sure that you know who you will be meeting. Ask for a schedule in advance and prep for it. You don't want to go into an interview and meet with a faculty member and then have no idea what they're doing in the department and what their role is. So that means you do your homework on every single person that you're meeting with. You can hold a conversation, you can ask them about their work, and also make sure you tell them about your work, because that's what you're there for. And so you essentially have like a few minutes prepared to just open the conversation and say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm excited about, and why this is a great place.
Mm-hmm.
How many interviews are there?
Sorry?
How many interviews are there in the postdoc process and the faculty search process?
I mean, it depends. For a postdoc, you might just, essentially interview with the PI and meet the group. For faculty, we typically have a day or two of meetings lined up with a number of faculty members, the search committee, and so those days can be long and grueling, but it's an opportunity for you to also get to know the department.
Will there be Zoom interview for faculty positions?
There could be a step with Zoom interviews to do a pre-selection from a long list down to a short list. Yeah.
Okay, so some places, especially with physics departments, they love chalk talks in addition to your job talk. And a chalk talk is kind of what it says on the tin, but it really depends. Some places mean like seminar instead of chalk talk. So it doesn't always mean that we want you to give a talk on the blackboard, but sometimes it does. So just be super clear with your communication with your host. So your job talk, you really have to convince them that you're an excellent researcher. If it's for faculty, then you also have to show that you're a good teacher, because sometimes you don't have a lot of teaching experience when you go into your first faculty position, which is totally normal. And so you have to tell a compelling story of, like why you did amazing things and then what you hope to do in the future that will be even more amazing.
So, yeah, I think the chalk talk is really, it's more of a conversation about how to run a group, getting into the nitty-gritty details, and it's more back and forth than the typical seminar style talk or colloquium that you give. But you can and should really ask what they're expecting, and that will definitely vary from department.
Mm-hmm. I've given chalk talks that are actually like deriving something on a chalkboard, other chalk talks that are basically just seminars saying like this project can be for this first student, or so it really depends. I think we've kind of gone over this.
Yeah, I would just really emphasize this as you go into applications, whether it's postdoc or faculty. Keep in mind that basically we're trying to hire future colleagues. That means that we are looking for humans. We are not just looking for a researcher in field X. And clearly the science is important, research is important, should be a good fit. How you interact in the department is also very important. And how you can contribute to the department, to the university. So these are all important considerations.
Negotiations. So maybe you want to focus on two-body opportunities.
Well, so when you get the offer, let's say, I mean, for postdoc positions, there's usually not too much of a negotiation. You get an offer with a certain salary. If you have other offers, maybe you can ask to match that. There may be relocation supplements, relocation costs, things like that. You can ask, or if there's a research stipend associated with the postdoc offer. The real negotiations start when you're at the faculty level, and there you want to make sure that you get the resources that you need to start your research. So typically, as part of the startup package, we want to provide people with enough resources that you can do your work for about 3 years until you win your first grants. So think about the personnel that you need, postdocs, graduate students, the travel that you have, the equipment that you need. And so that for the first 2-3 years, you can build up your group, write your first grant applications, and then win support. There are many different ways that universities support the starting faculty. And so when you do negotiations, talk with your advisors, talk with your mentoring network, ask questions, and articulate not just the dollar amount that you would hope to see in your offer letter, but what are the resources that you need? For example, when someone says, I would like to have 3 graduate students in my group for the next 3 years, different universities have different ways of supporting this. They might give you the equivalent funding for it, or they might give you university fellowships or things like that. So that's important. When you quite often, and nowadays it's even more so, you might find yourself in a situation where you and your partner are looking for positions. And that's great. I mean, we have several couples also in the department here. And you have to think about when and if you want to bring it up. I wouldn't bring it up immediately in your interview, in your first interview, but when you have the offer, then you have enormous leverage, because basically when you have the offer, the university has made a commitment and said, we think you're an excellent candidate and we would like to have you in our department. And then typically what I try to do is, as chair, try to understand, okay, what are all the boundary conditions to bring this person into our community, into the department? I try to understand what the personal situation is, what resources they need, and so on. And then at that point, hopefully I will learn about if there are other boundary conditions like having a partner or so in the field or in another field, and then the university can also try to look for opportunities. So I would say make sure you land the offer, and then after that, try to be open about the boundary conditions, because at that point it's a dance, and you try to both sides try to make it work. You want to land a job, and the department has made essentially the step saying, okay, we want you for the job. You are a great candidate.
Also, if you are in that situation, I would recommend applying for more jobs than you would normally apply for, because not everyone is going to be able to make you an offer for you and for your partner. And so you need to cast a net that's wide enough so that you can maybe even get 2 places that can give both of you offers. And then that really helps, you know, everyone involved, especially you, because now you have more leverage. You have 2 places that want both you and your partner. So just always cast a really wide net, and wider than you think that you might need, because it is difficult to find funds for a second person.
About support systems. So I think like many universities provide these subsidies for housing and education prices. But some of them is like, I think all of them is conditioned on that you stay in this university.
Yeah.
So in the case like of, for example, we decided to move, or maybe I didn't get the tenure track, some of these benefits will be basically revoked, and then in some extreme case you may need even to pay the university back. Do you think that's common in your universities, and how should we deal with it?
Well, I mean, every university, every institution has different sets of benefits and support. So certainly, if you're trying to, if you're applying for a junior faculty position, let's say, or if you're applying for a faculty position at Stanford, and you know the housing market on the West Coast, that's very different than, let's say, you're somewhere else in the country. So universities recognize that they need to provide certain ways to make it possible for faculty to live there. And that can come in different forms. It can come in terms of housing support and in all sorts of things, but it really depends on the university, what level you're applying at. And so it's best then to ask and really understand in detail.
To follow up on that, how do we make sure that the basically 6 promised by the university at this negotiation stage will be enforced afterwards? Because I mean, situation could change, and there could be factors like government that's not out of control of the university.
The most powerful thing that you have is your letter. Whatever you want to happen for real ever has to be written down in the offer letter that you get and that you sign. And everything else would be nice, but is not, I think, guaranteed. And if it comes to government things, I'm not sure that there's anything that anyone can do.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now perhaps is a little extreme, but I would just generally say yes, the offer letters are where you want to have everything captured. That's important for your position.
So you can like update the offer letter, say you have a 2-body problem, you can get the offer letter updated to reflect that.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes we go through several iterations. Often at Yale, we actually don't send the official letter until all the details are settled, just because it takes a while to go through all the institutional approvals for an offer letter. And so what would happen for faculty positions often is that you start talking with the chair. You start talking about what are your startup needs, what are the equipment needs, lab, start date, all of these things. And basically, we develop all the terms. And then at the end of the day, I work with the dean's office on generating the official letter that's really good.
So maybe just one more thing on this slide, which is the second one, is to not say, you know, I need $2 million in my startup fund. It would be, you know, I need support for 3 students for 5 years and 1 postdoc for 3 years. And I need 1,000 CPUs that have this much memory that I can access on my own and I need, I've tracked my spending from my previous like fellowships and I spend about $20,000 a year on travel. So I need something like that to keep going and then maybe $5,000 per student, right? So you can like, and that's what you ask for. You don't say, I just need X amount of money, but you have to like tell a story of like what you need. And if you don't know how much students cost or whatever, that's not so important at the beginning. As you talk with the chair, they can tell you how these things work. In some places, the students don't cost you as a PI anything at all. In other places, you not only pay for the stipend, but you also pay tuition for them. And so it's really, really variable. So ask for things, not for money. Okay. Closing thoughts, Karsten.
Well, so it can be daunting, but I think you see examples here of people who have made it, who have survived. So I would say that it is a competitive process, it can be highly personal, but it can also be rewarding. In the sense, yes, you may not have all the guarantees early on in your career. There are uncertainties of what's the next step after a postdoc, can you get tenure, all of these things. But many people have managed to navigate it. And so this is what you want to do. I would definitely encourage you to do it. I think it's a great thing what we do here. I love the work. I love the flexibility, the freedom. At the end of the day, I can choose the projects that I'm working on. It can be highly stressful from times. So be prepared, build your network, build your support network, ask questions, work with your advisors and mentors. And at the end of the day, I know it's hard to really embrace it, but if you have some setbacks or you don't land the first position immediately, it's not always about your skills. As we try to emphasize, departments are trying to find a fit, and there are many different considerations that go into this. So the best thing is be prepared, know where you're applying to, what the culture is, and be yourself, because we really want to know the people that in the end, coming into our.
I think that that's a good summary. Also, be yourself can be really hard because, of course, if you're interviewing somewhere, you want them to like you and you want to fit in. And but it makes people really uncomfortable if you try to be someone other than you are. They can smell it a mile away, and then they get suspicious. They're like, "Why is this person being so weird?" So really, just try to relax. And if they, if they don't think that you're a good fit, then chances are, like, you would also be miserable in that position. So. It really is just the best practice to be yourself, and don't try to sell yourself as something that you're not just because you think the department is looking for a skill that like maybe you're okay at, but you're not great at. Just, say like, these are my skills. This is what I love. This is what keeps me up at night in a good way. And, just see if they respond to that.
Questions? I know we're up at time. We ran a few minutes over. Hopefully this has been somewhat useful, and happy to chat at any time. We're available.
Absolutely.
Many of us are available in the department. So come with your questions. We want to see you all succeed. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.